Hello, everyone. This is part two of the Scattered Cosmic Vision episode. I had to, I was interrupted and I had to leave. So, in this part two, I'm going to reapproach the subject again. Sometimes, when the world changes, the self changes. Therefore, the viewpoints of the same self change. I remember that I was okay. I remember actually. I was talking about how I wanted to get into this kind of mystery, this kind of mystical puzzle for me, why there was a snake on top of above Buddha's head, protecting him from the rain. And I sometimes thought, that was that an actual snake? Was that an actual cobra? Or was it a metaphor? And I realized that the metaphor and the image of it are pointing to the same thing after some point. What it means is the being is protected by karma. That cobra is protecting Buddha from karma. Karma is like this machine programmed since long ago. We find our eyes in it. But once life is engaged, life is entertained, the reverence for the animate is reborn from the ashes of a phoenix. A new self has a totally new access to energy. Did you not know? That energy is not per se. I mean, of course I get it. External energy, yeah, eat properly, sleep properly, you know the basics. But I'm saying that when it comes to the inner effort behind our eyes, there can be movements, there can be horizons that open instantly. And that has to do with being introduced to the dimension of geometry. And this is kind of a strange thing to say, but I feel, at least I've kind of opened my eyes to speak about the inverted triangle. I find there's going to be people in the future, there's going to be one for every shape. And they're going to, in some sense, represent the archetype of that shape. That means their personality is going to be the first into the subtler geometrical dimension. Therefore, the archetype becomes relevant to their attention. It's as if the first person who opens the box, what's in the box sees them first. You know. This is why the notion of a savior, I also find, was close to God, because it was against all odds that the occurrence occurred. There's a story, a very profound story in Christianity. It's the story of Thomas the Doubter. It seems that Christ appears after his crucifixion. He appears to his apostles, and Thomas is not there. And Thomas kind of gets to the main room, and suddenly people tell him he was right here. The living Lord was right here, and we all saw him. And Thomas doubts all of them and says, "Unless I touch the wound, the healed wound of Christ, I will not." Until my hand touches the flesh, I will not believe, right? So Thomas doubted everything people said. He wasn't convinced. And then, when in some sense there came a moment where Christ returned and Thomas was in the room, Christ called upon Thomas to come and touch the wound to make sure. And Thomas was known as the only person who touched the resurrected body of Christ. And so the whole idea is that I find that same archetype of a doubter, not denying fully, yet not accepting fully. That kind of limbo mind. A mind that's playing limbo, literally. That is why, for example, the skeptical exploration was so result oriented. That means it's as if doubt leads you towards clarity about material conditions. It's necessary. For example, when you're walking in the street and you hear a sound of a motorcycle but you don't see one, you maybe pause for a second on the street and then suddenly see a motorcycle jet pass by. Do you know? So it's like doubted. Everything has its use in accordance to the moment, if it's necessary to be evoked or not. That means I find the greatest kind of wisdom that I felt at some point, I felt it belonged to me, but I realized it never could, was this sense of knowing which battles to fight. I think that was it. There was a sort of strange intuition since my childhood. I say strange to me because I didn't notice it until later on, that there was something more than my mind going on here. And when the heart resolves that doubt, I find the winds of karma change. When you live your honest life, the universe is like, okay, this being's being what it's being. It's like time to show them the real deal. And perhaps I'm making it seem too casual. What it is that you realize you're alive once. You realize you're also a temporary being. You realize evolution is like an eternal effort. It's like endless continuity. You wonder about what the meaning of life is. You come to the realization that a percentage of it, you can say 50% of it is self-generated, 50% of it is unknown. That means the reason we call it the observable universe is because there is certain parts of it we have not observed yet. So similarly, when we go to discover the phenomenology of the mind and what it really means to us, it's kind of strange because the mind is defining itself by tools it has created. On the right side, you see a picture of Rishi Vyasa. And what Rishi Vyasa is doing there, I find, of course, this is a picture, ancient picture. I'm just one guy giving a commentary, but Rishi Vyasa was known as the incarnation of God in language, simply because his eyes were open beyond the language threshold in a way where he was resolute. You see, it's as if it doesn't, Rama kind of brought this point in. Rama, this very mystical, mythological kind of figure, he was asked about work, and he's like, and somebody came up to him and said, Rama, what is this human life? What is the point of this? Why are we in this? Why do we have to work till the end of our days? And it's as if people's attention was suddenly grabbed by that question. The question was too important to ignore throughout the day. You will find this in your life. There will be some moments that you will deep down know you should not ignore. You should just take a step towards, and the reality recalibrates again, and then take another step forward. It recalibrates. Eventually you align to your rhythmic kind of being, and after you abide by a rhythmic being, you get a sort of collective presence to your psychology. When you get that collective presence to your psychology, it strangely brings an overwhelming contentment, because for the first time, self and other are of one momentary value. It's as if the here and now was not a place of bliss and joy and love. The here and now was the most chaotic thing ever. It was the destruction of time. And so Rama tells that man, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why this earth is the only place that many beings feel, whether high and low, they feel this is the playground of enlightenment. Me and you are in the playground of enlightenment. And so Rama says the lesser beings in the lesser dimensions, and in ancient times the plane of existence was seen as the bottom of this kind of transcendental mountain, where the higher realms were the lokas and were the greater heavens. And so Rama says that beneath the dimensions, the creatures of the dimensions below us, They are not conscious yet. They are in unconscious loops of suffering without being aware they are suffering. That's the sad part of living like an animal. You don't realize the intensity of the savageness because it's just like it's like a person kind of more acquainted to their own body odor than what I'm saying. What I'm saying here is that Rama says the lesser dimensions are too unconscious to ask the question, and the higher dimensions are getting so many offerings. The gods in the higher dimensions are getting so many offerings, and life is literally not a challenge for them. It is only in the human condition where the challenges of the world meet you on a daily basis. The challenges of an individual conscious existence. Assume you attain the ultimate resolution. Assume you are walking down from the top of the mountain, not going up to the mountain. So till the end of your life, you're a bewildered animal waiting for truth to kind of open your eyes. It doesn't. There needs to be a realness to it, and realness, and then honesty. Where in that honesty is like literally a little kid standing in an empty black abyss of the cosmos. Just being like, okay, what next? You know? That's the most humble ego, guys. The what next kind of ego. There's a suggestion that only beautiful eyes can build a beautiful world. What that means is beauty is a suggestion of a state of mind. And in that state of mind, the most ultimate, I have found the most ultimate beauty is the beauty of the dynamism. It's literally that moment where the attention shifts and reality moves again. The rhythms and flows of reality move again. Rishi Vyasa, let me tell you what I feel is going on in that picture. If you notice, there are light beams from the eyes of that. The blue guy is Rishi Vyasa, by the way. The blue guy. Rishi Vyasa is sharing his vision. And what it is, guys, there's never a hierarchy to power beyond manifestation. It becomes it becomes either void or full. So it becomes like a coin flip beyond this dimension, I find. What does that mean? That means the unknown moves the known, you can never guess it, or the known moves the unknown and finds itself getting tired. So on one end, the inner quest for exploring the unconscious of the human mind, will lead us to fatigue. On another end, it will lead us to such an unknown movement where it's like man suddenly is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's not me who's just a citizen of the planet. The planet's mind is awake too. You see, that's man's ability to, it's like there's two views simply. It's like the leaf being moved by the river can choose to see the river as intelligent and itself as inanimate, or it can choose to see itself as animate and the river inanimate. But because man is in such a vast universal stage, the laws of the universe are like the river moving him. And his interaction with the laws of the universe is that they are not qualities of a living phenomena. They are kind of like furniture in a room. When we treat the cosmos as furniture in the room, the cosmos gets offended, guys. You know, do you know how many people offend the cosmos on a daily basis? You know. Another way of viewing the scattered cosmic vision is by man putting aside stories for one moment and to try to take The subjective relationship as a metaphor, unknown metaphor for the objective. You see, to be honest, we're left in a very strange situation, and I'm talking to the creative minds out there. I'm talking to the advanced communicators, people who are being sensitive to how life is a momentary communication of expression, and what the implication is. What is the significance of our moments of being? What does life want us to look at? And strangely, it's the thing that can never be seen. It is your own eyes. Like, you can definitely look at yourself in the mirror and be like, all right, I see myself. I found myself. But you can also look at the mirror and realize that what is looking out through your eyes is not of a purely visible texture only. There are many things that exist that are not simply in the awareness of the human being. This doesn't mean what we think is the only thing that's there. It's like we gave too much of a loud voice to thought. Now we all think we are thoughts. Nature has a chaos to it, by the way. You cannot spend too much time in nature not being aware of the sort of think of it this way. Every person is is allotted a time to, how would I say this? To be honest, I have no way of communicating this thought, but I can say it's like we're taking the hammer of knowledge and trying to break our past views of the unknown, only to realize that the future's creation emerges from the present. So there's something about time that people should know, that you wear the watch, you put on the watch. You adopt and accept the cosmos. Hey, Ivan, which question is that you're referring to? Because I think there's a delay between when I give the talk and it actually is broadcasted to you guys. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I think it has to do with attention, Ivan. The way I kind of see, I pretty much got this realization that we're not just shapes. We move through shapes, and that which is kind of moving is, to be honest, has to be attributeless to feel it has changed. That means you got to let go of something. Something throughout the day has to change for you to feel like it's a new day, right? So you can say there's a level of vitality and excitement that can arise from your inner dimensions, and there's a certain sense time. I don't know how to say it. I just feel it's like we have to start treating our minds like wild animals that need to be studied. And the wild part comes from the unknown factor and how man has a relationship with a conscious reality and a subconscious imagination and an unconscious void. I find that something I feel I should share. I don't know why, but I was kind of like I had the privilege of going to Venice, and when I remember it's like one of my early impressions of Italy came from they had this kind of royal masquerade party and whatever. the idea that people are masking themselves in moments of energetic expression. It's as if, think of a masquerade party where the faces of the person was invisible, so the person was being identified by their actions, by their speech, by their how other components from the face of the person moved. Now that was a very unique thing, because I thought about the ego kind of being a subjective mask, and we're all in this cosmic, like vast collective egoic Venetian masquerade. That every person is like, okay, this thought in the moment I am, okay, this thought I am, this thought I am, this is how the world is, and this kind of like language endlessly trying to penetrate the full definition of what the unknown is. So eventually there comes a sensitivity, and I find it happens through, it's a weird kind of enlightening feel that arises from boredom, but a very long period of boredom. What that means is like, imagine you are a great footballer, but you never get a chance to play football. Ivan, what do you mean by Queen's Day in Amsterdam? I don't know much about that. Can you share a bit more there? Pretty much, we're trying to open up the eyes of the species. I feel eventually there needs to be a global stage. This global stage must realize that the greatest resource on the planet is the value giver to the resource. And the value giver is the human mind, so automatically the human being is the greatest resource this planet has. Now, what is the human being? We find it a sort of attention. We find it a sort of evolution of attention to evolution. How interesting. Two things have fascinated me. I'm going to get to this global stage idea in a bit, but just something that's really fascinated me is, like, at first it was what I didn't know. That was very fascinating. I felt there was stuff happening that I wasn't aware of, so I'm like, pretty much all of knowledge for me is like peeping my head out of the door. Kind of being like, okay, what's going on in this room? And in this room, and eventually the kind of geometrical subjective classification that occurs, because you begin treating things either as if it's like the object is in its own world or the object is in your world. If I tend to see many things in my own world first, I will miss out on their nature. For example, if I'm speaking to someone and I think I know who they are, that's the moment where even if they communicate something new, it would still be filtered by what I think, right? So just the ability to put down thought for a moment and just be present in that silence, in that stillness. It's like, what greater meditation can there be? To notice how it's not that matter is in light, so is thought. They are in the same light. And that light is not per se a light, but it is a moment. There's nothing more divine than your moment. I remember I was in Iran and I was saying this thing where I was saying, in the summer of 2016, I found myself there. I said to the person, your only guru, it's like I was kind of intensely shouting it. I was like, the only task of the external guru is to show you the inner guru, or you'll be following some random person for your whole life. It's like it's about freedom that arises naturally. Because if it is a sort of freedom attained unnaturally, the person subconsciously feels they don't deserve what they don't know. So it's about a new wave of the future generations realizing how authenticity activates their intelligence in society. Because it's like in life, it's either seek the new, because the past has already been seen. Oh, nice. Yeah, I agree with that, Ivan. You say look into the pool of that which you wish not to see, and the truth can be held in a cup. Something interesting I can say, and Ivan, this can go as a response to what you're saying. Yeah, I remember hearing in the Tao Te Ching, that which can be said, the real Tao cannot be said, and that which is being said is not the real Tao. I understood that. I understood there was a silent truth that no word could touch. But after remaining in that silence, there came a question in my mind: why is language here? When I asked myself, why is language here, my mind, from all the subjective heavens and mythological archetypes it was inhabiting, it just rushed down. It was as if there was a strange supernova explosion, where it was as if life was like, you have graduated beyond the metaphysical, don't seek it no more. Do you know? And so what I mean by that is, I suddenly realized the most significant, deepest thought of man is must suddenly reach the ears of the simplest world. So what I mean by that is, I realize you can't have a storyline out of this world and then make decisions in this world. When I understood that, it was like I snapped out of the language simulation and I came back to a strange silence. It wasn't a silence that in the subconscious was trying to escape the temporary, so it thought itself to be, it claimed itself as eternal. It was a pure silence. It was a silence of no conception. And when you hit one of those moments, you'll suddenly see everything originating from a new value. It's as if you're not reborn, but your mind is, you know? So I find it to be a return, kind of how in Zen they drew a circle. At first you're running into a domain of where every mind brings with itself its metaphysical laws. It brings its how its eyes have been exposed to design, and how the repetition of the cyclical nature of those designs appear as laws. So I find there will come a moment where the being will realize there isn't time to lie. That's the moment. That's the moment where I think life actually begins happening. It's like the cradle of karma opens, you know? So for me, it's not about trying to escape in some metaphysical abode where it's like heaven has no challenges. How would you evolve in heaven? Heaven to me suggests a state of non-evolution. It's either an escape to a better earth, or it's an escape out of earth. You know. So the concept of heaven is it's as unknown as its creator. You know, it's this is something that it's I really like it, because there was a tradition. Language has a dualistic nature. So the teacher was like, back in the day, the guy was like, oh man, I can't just talk about good things. If I just talk about good things, people are going to think everything's good. If I just talk about bad things, people are going to think everything is bad, you know? So the person was like, what do I do? And it went into this kind of drunken dance of a sort of the mind oscillating between chaos and order. So in any moment, I can evoke a thought and just consider the whole fabric of reality different. Thanks, Ivan. Very thought-provoking comments from your side, so I appreciate that. It's I just feel what it is it's something unavoidable. I think it's natural. I think just like how the caterpillar transforms into a totally different being, as if like in its previous, before it enters the cocoon, it's like, gosh, why do I have so many legs? And why am I so small, you know? And then suddenly it goes on to experiencing three-dimensional space, as if it was the biological program first experienced like the ground and then lifted into the sky. So I find that this may be a kind of, it's one of those Mr. Within hypothesis that kind of was born one night when I was giving these talks. And it's this idea that I kind of looked at a caterpillar and I felt there was what's going to happen to the mind is that the mind is experiencing itself as a self in a world, and if death was seen as the cocoon, it would be in some sense a world and a self. So I feel literally there is some sort of attributeless kind of sine wave like oscillating attention throughout the cosmos, like this strange wave, and this wave is taking turns in being the self in a world and being the world of the self. So believe it or not, just like how we can see, like for example, our body when we pass away, its elements are going to return back to nature. You know, it's as if we consume nature for some time, and when we die, nature consumes us. Now, similarly, because we have this objective relationship with ourselves, we tend to have a sort of individualized subjective relationship. When a person is afraid of their attention not being able to return to a previous state, they become violent. It's a fear of sort of loss, but I'm trying to kind of I'm trying to say like alongside every objective phenomena we have seen, there has been a subjective significance that could have been ascribed to that objective activity. Right? So we tend to ascribe and contain all those objective experiences through a subject in the moment that appears as this kind of hovering field of an idea. You can say the body is occurring in the spotlight of attention. Right? And to study that attention, to become aware of it, eventually means you got to confront the unknown component of your mind. I find there's a lot of wonder left to kind of be rediscovered. There's a lot of things our species doesn't know. All right, guys, I'm going to pay attention to the chat now. Hold on. Okay, so thanks, Ivan. I'm reading your question. Yeah, definitely. I believe language is very crucial. Yeah. I mean, I am bilingual, but I'm also a person who believes he's not a creature of language. So I don't embody it. So it's like there have been many moments where I've said certain things that it's like I've noticed how the communication is it has a totally different design than my own overall framework and context to being. What it is, guys, is to be honest, we could totally create something new in psychology, and we can call it the successor complex. Just like the savior complex, we have a sort of archetype where the person feels they have no value until they do something that is, they either have to prove themselves to themselves or they have to prove themselves to their world. Both, if not naturally done, will take your attention. The way is that I find your teacher becomes the unknown, and then you are left confronting the cosmic solitude of your mind. That's when you can't hit back. That's a moment where you just watch. You're like literally the observer. In that moment of being the observer, if consciousness is retained in that state of the observer, it's not that you, it's like, whoa, something cool's happening. It's just that you become, you get a micro sensitivity to the rhythms of subjective subconscious simulations that occur. So I want you to say that it's like, imagine all these words that I'm saying right now, they are in a battlefield. They're in this giant battlefield where many ideas are coagulating with one another, right? It's not even in my control. It's just like I open my eyes, you open your house door, you see designs there. Similarly, the mind is a phenomena that it retains image as itself. I think the most preliminary, kind of like the most immediate way that the person can start having a relationship with the unknown is wondering about their relationship with their own knowledge and the types of dimensions and the ways that data moves in their attention. I find that's the unique factor, that if we are not designed to be clones, to be all comparatively have equal value. You know, it's like equality was the space given and many things were intended to occur. I see what you're saying, Ivan. I'm just reading through your comments. Yeah, but I'm just suggesting that there are interactions that that means there has to be an action that starts the interactions, and one action and one system of intelligence engaging another, right? So that first effort of intelligence, I have kind of noticed that first effort can be seen as attributeless or filled with attributes. If it's filled with attributes, immediately it can be brought into language. We can speak about it. If it can't be seen with attributes, that means there is still a tiny percentage of our calculation that has an unknown factor to it. So it's either we respect the unknown factor or ignore it and claim that the box of our limits holds everything. You know, so I find that's the situation. It's like this civilization is not destined to be a rational place. It's destined to be an evolving place. And for evolution, there requires kind of sometimes an exploration. There may be no past pattern in civilization that can relate to a certain finding. Do you mean there is no objective, Ivan? Do you mean there is no objective observer because it's first person? Because I mean, I find every human being kind of develops their own relationship with towards space and time. For example, my relationship to space is that it used to be unknown for some time, the space around me. Let's say I'm in a room and the space in the room that I'm in, right? So that space felt unknown, but I experienced certain moments, for example, where the attention became non-local. So I felt like I was the whole space in the room, being aware of my body in the room. And then there were moments where I, like, the typical moment is like, okay, I'm aware of my body in the room, you know. So a sort of kind of shift of the state of being in accordance to the attention's sense of location. Or I guess, I don't know, another way of saying it is how objectivity moves in the eyes of the observer. Because to be honest, we're left in this, the philosophers are left in this situation, and Rene Descartes really contributed to this, where the mind-body dualism. In some sense, how the mind and body are in their own dimensions, occurring at the same time, yet separate from each other. Their dimensions are not relevant. Sorry, guys, I need a quick intermission. I'll be back. Okay, guys, sorry about that. I'm back. Where is it all leading? In one manner, we can kind of like how Buckminster Fuller spoke about spaceship Earth, take this mentality that we're all on this boat of knowledge, whatever the species has accumulated so far. You know, even though we are a fragmented tribe, I find because there's the potential to see a collective, at least let's entertain the notion. You know, that means we can wonder about things that are not still here, you know. And so if we're wondering about how would the collective efficient vision of man occur, it's as if you see failure and then you're like, okay, I saw the failure. If the failure exists, 100% the success exists, right? So it's one of those things where the opposite design of it shows you. You know, what's very fascinating is to realize that the type of environment one finds themselves in becomes a voice behind their mind as well. It's as if sometimes when I speak, I'm not standing in one room of thought. You know, it's as if a part of me while giving the talk, like as I'm saying this, and my behind, like I notice another thought stream where it's like it has to do with memories. You see, so this is how I identify phenomenology in the subjective realm. One way of another way I've spoken about it is I say it's the imagination. It's like your subtler plane of abstraction. You know, that means there's there's unobservable subtler dimensions where there is kind of, you can at least for the sake of the mainstream say micro kind of phenomenology is occurring. This micro phenomenology in its own room has a big implication. That means that moment when you close your eyes and wonder who's sitting here, you suddenly realize you are. And that sense of you, that sense of me, that is a very pure relationship with in regards to thought being matter. It's either objectivity is embodying thought or thought is embodying objectivity. When a person speaks, that's subjectivity embodying thought, embodying objectivity. Yeah, let me tell you, Ivan, I was just read your last comment. You say, I call it the quiet room. One can limit their interaction, but there's always a little reaction, no matter what. It's impossible to get away from the conception of perception, which is the wheel. Let me tell you why it's impossible, or it appears to be. Because the world was started with that design in place. The moment's value and significance was started with that design. This is why in Zen they say it's so important when you're trying to climb a mountain, start at the top. When the mind tries to explore the unconscious, in some sense it's a moment where it's a one for all moment. And the all is the unknown. So it's the known for the unknown kind of moment. In one manner, the ignorance of civilization does lead to newer versions of clarity. On another end, if we had clarity first, then our ignorance could have become updates for our clarity. So you see, it's like one grand movement. We are a certain conscious component, a sort of conscious breeze. That's a really nice way, actually, to see human life. Every human being being born is a breeze upon the environment. Or as some have considered, we are thoughts of the Gaian mind. We are the planet's reflection in the mirror. I find there will be the birth of many new technologies. Inner technologies, unfortunately, the more the attention gets occupied with the external technology, the inner technologies go less explored. The more there is external stuff to do, the less there is need for being aware of your inner space. So what the human being can do is try to, as the ancients, or you can say in Morihei Shiba, the founder of Aikido, as was the wisdom of Japanese culture at the time, it was like finding, seeing, witnessing the soul of heaven and earth. I remember Morihei Shiba said it like that. Just hear this out, guys. Noticing, seeing the soul as if the one prime mover of all dimensions is one moment. The witness of heaven and earth. The balance between the objective realm and the subjective realm. Some stories are meant to be read more than once, and that goes for history as well. Man has to recognize that the whole concept of magic, I find, this is why it was like some conspiracy theorists were like, whoa, they're teaching kids spelling. Is this like a magic agenda? And the whole thing is yes and no. Yes, in ancient times, language's introduction, it was a technology that the people who found access to it had power. I'm not joking. Because what it meant is that they understood the being's attention could be manipulated. And you can manipulate someone's attention by limiting them to only certain set of beliefs, and the person never wonders who they are. They just go in that loop. It's kind of savage. It's a very strange karma, and I find karma is something that the moment only can be a remedy to. The joy that transforms into service, that mind is very precise. It's like kind of like we have to be careful we don't become a civilization of clones. That can also occur through ideological possession. That means human beings thinking they're only limited to a set of ideas rather than the ability to see every moment you can spark a new idea. Vision can arise everywhere. It's kind of strange, but I wondered why in certain ancient Vedic mythology there were archetypes of God being a devourer. And I thought, okay, if the mythology arose at a savage time where people were walking the forest and animals attacked them, so I could totally see how the concept of devouring and consuming something was so crucial to evolution. But we are reaching a time in 2019 that we can no longer just endlessly devour and consume. That's the thing. That's the ultimate resolution of the objective search and the subjective search. Now you are the builder. Now you are the design in place. Now you are what life is occurring as. This gives one a strange power. It gives them a sort of union with nature. Not a union of like, okay, let's go hug trees, you know. A sort of union where you realize natural law is acting on everyone. The laws of nature leave nothing out. When you understand this, it's like we are all standing in the same way. It's like what I have in common with you is not what we like. The ideas we have. It is our sense of unknown. How there is no measurement to the phenomenology yet, no subjective translation or pattern to it yet. Sometimes it's very crucial. Sometimes you got to know what patterns you can maintain as you allow these thoughts into your sphere of activity. Now, it doesn't mean the person should become a neat freak of their subjectivity. You can't really control thoughts. You know, anything you try to control for too long, two things happen. Either you can't, or you will also become controlled and defined by what you control. So this was the savage sadness of power's misuse. That it chained, as much as it put shackles on the slave, it made that it made the slave owner in some sense also have this mentality that it's limited and it can't leave. So the situation is a double enslavement. The mind of the master is enslaved, the body of the what do you call it? The body of the slave is enslaved. So this dynamic, we see it in history, guys. It's like right now, it's like I'm so happy for 2019. You know, it's like, but back in the day when you go read at history, it's like, wow, their sense of ethics and nature was in an evolutionary stage. That means it was better than their past, but it was still worse. It was still savage. So what that means is, after savage objective behavior, we are now going through an evolutionary phase where we went through savage subjective behavior. That means the body became more civilized, but the mind was still an animal. Right? And now the mind is becoming more civilized and the body is wondering about its purpose again. And and the reason I'm using these words is like, not that your intelligence is fragmented into various dimensions of access and unauthorization, but it's like your intelligence is a moment. You can access it simply. You can walk very simply and gently in the moment, or you can speed through. You know, so there's various intensities. It has to do again with the evocational property of the subjective design that becomes the context of the moment, which can be limiting or it can help you become limitless. It's like they ask someone, why do you like your limitations? And he's like, because they show me the limitless. Very simply. Because think about it, like there was something this said in psychology. There were certain poker. It's in poker players, and when they go to casinos, their psychology. And if the person doesn't feel subconsciously they deserve their wealth, they will, in some sense, strangely be open to giving it away. Right? Imagine there was somebody who was using wealth that wasn't his, for example. So the situation is that behind our eyes, the world is trying to stand still in the shaking decision making that's occurring, in the turbulence of decision making. Because there are moments in life where, yes, the person saw it, saw the efficient path, took it. There's moments in life where the person didn't see the efficient path, couldn't even take it. And there are moments in life where the person saw the efficient path and didn't take it. And do you see? It's like various states of mind. Like I have a relationship with my moment of being that is so silent, because literally it's just phenomenal. It's just phenomenology. It's just an energetic occurrence. It's just like watching fire burn in a way where it's like you are the glow of the flame. So what I mean by that is like I'm speaking about fire on an elemental level. Kind of like how fire, it was just fire before suddenly they painted it in the picture of hell. One has to be attentive to how thought moves throughout the day as well, but not to become obsessed from it, obsessed by it, because I'm telling you, you'll eventually notice there's a strange freedom behind any law. You see, it's like if you look at a law, it's like a wall where on the other side, if you listen to the law, you are given access to it, to its pattern and atmosphere. But if you don't respect the law, you're not given access. And so when we find ourselves in a situation where we have to build new laws because then we are becoming new minds, then it becomes a totally different approach of the maintenance of civilization. Because right now we are finding that here's the cool thing. It's like you tell me what is left for human beings to do. We have cultivated a kind of advanced ethics of certain civility and ideals of peace. That means our subjective realm has contemplated various ways, parallel versions of how the world could be a better place. Now, at the same time, we find ourselves to be a species that is recent, like nowadays, just opening up to how that it's like people are. You can say it's been a very short time in history that we've had the opportunity to communicate our inner realms for the first time on a global stage. The internet was a strange kind of divine gift. It was an evolutionary leap unfathomable. It's pretty much one of the phases to where an individual consciousness realizes the ultimatum is a collective presence. But if it chooses to see its individualness as conscious, then it becomes, it's kind of like this, guys. It's like you can say that samadhi in yoga is how your body becomes unconscious to you and the unconscious becomes fully conscious. That means it's as if the material, the attention to matter has reached a sort of fruition. Then the mind opens. Then it becomes this kind of very unique situation where this is where Mr. Within is kind of hoping that I call it the school, like Project School of Athens 2.0. I had this vision of kind of a new school of Athens opening. Now, this school of Athens is a call to action of the members of civilization to find a sort of internal freedom or enough internal freedom to share contributions of patterns in their inner realms with the outer realm. It's kind of like we really don't have that much options. We're on an island and we have to use every tool we can, but the tools and the patterns and the greatest ideas are behind people's eyes. And it is only through communication that they find a bridge towards having an external value. So what it means is we have to begin not only cultivating the ability of the species to communicate and to function and to move in through the era of advanced communication, but it's like I want you to imagine your body evolved to a point where it became a mind. Now your mind has evolved to a point where, in some sense, neither the objective or subjective are the drivers of the moment. They are just passengers. That you can anytime something happens with the driver, your objective realm can come and maintain you. Your subjective realm can maintain you. Death is a sense where the objective realm, it has to honorably just close its eyes to the subjective. But it doesn't mean the subconsciousness of subjectivity is gone. So think of it this way. Think of it, you're aware of material objects and you're also aware of immaterial thoughts. Now that awareness to immaterial thought had nothing to do with objectivity, so that is something which can, in a suggestive way, remain after the person, in some sense, breaks down. The biology, in some sense, completes its journey. The biological process program. The study of attention. I recommend that every person who listens to these talks start writing, but only write when an idea is important enough to you. This is why you can say Stoicism is a mature philosophy. That's why many warriors gravitated towards it. Because it had to do with the behavior of the person justifying the value of the cosmic value of the moment. One's actions held a significance as being an integrated kind of very crucial component to the experience of the phenomena of the moment. This is what I'm saying. We are unknown experiences, but we have found a way to share these experiences. So language not only has to update, not only does the will and intensity of exploration behind people's eyes must kind of update, it becomes a situation where you have to look at everything anew, and then you will revalue the moment, and through like the way the moment revalues, the new archetypes will step forth if you're authentic, if you're honest. Your mind communicates. You can say you don't know in how many genius acts have been found through playfulness, because it was a balance between the yin and yang. It was neither full certainty, it was neither full uncertainty. It was just continuity through a state of play. Elements are playing around. Evidently, the periodic table is looking at itself when it looks at when the person looks at the periodic table. So life is found to either be more complex than our language technology, than our technology of language. Either it can enter the subjective realm, or it cannot enter the subjective realm, or the objective will change the subjective realm so it can enter the subjective realm, or the objective will realize, just as the subjective will, that it's unchangeable. And it's that moment where the scientist was like, whoa, I can't measure space, without fabricating an edge to the container, So anyways, guys, I hope this talk was helpful. The notion of the scattered cosmic vision was pretty much this idea that this one mirror broke and it shattered into like tiny pieces. Each piece reflects the whole, each piece of the mirror reflects the whole, but at the same time, it is not active as its full potential. I feel human beings are living in the same patterns, that eventually evolution is internal rebellion to external circumstance. And so what that means is human beings will wonder about what better ways they can be alive. When we will have that wonder rekindled, there will be a completely new restructuring. It's as if humanity is like, whoa, we can create this awesome roller coaster ride that every person can enjoy, So it becomes like the totally different kind of navigation of ideology, and you have to, to be honest, a lot of true altruism is beyond the clouds of the attention to self. That means it's like certain things are done not because the person wants to be someone, but it's done because the person wants to see the world in a certain way. And when I say wants to see the world in a certain way, you have to listen to the patterns that history has shared. When I tell you we're on an island, like imagine a castaway situation, but an existential mass. It's like we're a species cast away in an atmosphere of superior intelligence compared to all the other species. Like it would have been a much cooler planet if all the other species were as conscious as us, But it's on some level, it's like that is not the case. We either have had a head start in our evolutionary design, or something unique happened to the creature. So that simplicity and pureness of being is what I think the reason is that perhaps some of these kind of, like you see in the picture of Buddha on the left, that Buddha's just chilling and there's a cobra. Like I could totally see how Buddha was sitting for such a long time in the same place that eventually in the karma of this moment, a cobra was passing by. And the cobra had a relationship with, I guess, an infrared sight. But I don't know what Buddha, like I'll tell you, there's ways you can sit in nature where it's as if you are neither human, you're neither nature, you're just the presence of the moment. This simple presence of the moment, when animals see it, they don't know how to respond to it. That means the creature just comes close, gazes. It's like the person is suddenly seen as kind of like, what does the snake do about the sunlight? What does the snake do about the air? It's like you become a quality of nature. And so what that means is you enter the hidden mind of nature. And of course, I feel you should contact your local Amazonian shaman about kind of the voices of nature, or a true Ayurvedist. But the whole thing is, I'm just saying that nature doesn't speak the language of words, it speaks the language of presence. And your presence has to do with how not only you're seeing yourself, how not only you're seeing the world, not only how the world is seeing you, but also a moment where all phenomenology is witnessed as present. That's the simple point. You require the here and now so you can fathom a sense of other or there. You know, we need a starting point. So anyways, guys, I hope this talk was helpful. The pilot of consciousness navigates as the whole plane of existence beyond the language threshold. We're not conceptual creatures. What that means is one of the greatest efforts of the educational system, global educational system, I'll say, because that's going to be let's set the bar high. And so what happens is that the educational system will realize the importance of recording all data that occurs throughout the day. You see, if you only have a rational filter on phenomenology, you're only getting access to patterns that relate to previous patterns of identification. But when you realize throughout the day a lot of new things happen, it's like, imagine shifting from a constant like a mechanistic kind of analysis process of the moment into how would I say it? A kind of like every moment has is like a new environment to respond to, rather than you going into new environments and trying to make that environment similar to the past. This is when the person truly lets go of the past. So literally, like a sort of, if karma is a bunch of storms at the same time, it's like a huge part of those storms are kind of thrown out. It's like the storm kind of fades, the tornado leaves. There's a story of Bodhidharma. I believe it was the Emperor of Japan starts building a lot of Buddhist monasteries and sharing Buddhic texts everywhere with the community, and truly honoring Buddhism. Bodhidharma, who was, I believe, the fifth patriarch of Buddhism in Japan, he took Buddhism to Japan pretty much. He came to the emperor, and the emperor looked at Bodhidharma and he said, Bodhidharma, look at all the temples and monasteries I've made. Look at how much Buddhism I've spread. Tell me, what's the merit? Like something like that. And Bodhidharma suddenly was a very intense figure. He was very badass. Bodhidharma looks at the emperor and says, all you have done is foolishness. There's no merit in what you have done. And he leaves. He leaves like as if like you're no king, fool. And so what happens is he leaves and he does something very strange. He literally leaves the palace and he goes outside of the wall of the palace and starts meditating with his face inches away from the wall of the palace in like this strange meditation. He goes into samadhi. Long story short, one wintry night, a bewildered man who has a very heavy problem, finds Bodhidharma, and he finds Bodhidharma and says, Bodhidharma, I need your help or something. And Bodhidharma is in this trance like samadhi state. It's like he's not even an individual in that moment, right? And so something unique happens. It's a foggy night, you know, let's imagine. Foggy, wintry night. Eventually, Bodhidharma steps out of his trance, and the man says, Bodhidharma, please help me. But I think probably because Bodhidharma wasn't fully grounded in his individual consciousness, the man thinks Bodhidharma is ignoring him, and the guy cuts one of his hands and holds it in his other hand. It looks at Bodhidharma kind of in a strange hand-in-hand way. And he says, Bodhidharma, I don't know, I think it was a sign of loyalty. I'm not sure why the guy did that, right? But he kind of did that, and he looks at Bodhidharma, and he's like, I will be loyal to you forever, but please pacify my mind. It's as if like I'm restless, I can't sleep. The dude had a problem that was so much of an internal burden that the person had become numb to their externality. Bodhidharma grants the man an audience. Bodhidharma says, what is your problem? He's probably like, what's your problem, man? But no, Bodhidharma says, what's the problem? And the guy says, please pacify my mind. It's restless. And there's a moment of silence. And Bodhidharma looks at the man and says, okay. And the guy gets happy. He says, okay, I'll pacify your mind, but first bring your mind in front of me and I'll pacify it for you. The guy thinks about it. He's like, whoa, 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 whoa. How can I bring my mind in front of this guy? And he's like looking for his mind in that moment. He's like, where's my mind? Oh man, Bodhidharma's here. I gotta give him my mind so he pacifies it. And he just can't find it. And he looks at Bodhidharma. He's startled and he says, Bodhidharma, I can't find my mind. And Bodhidharma looks at him and says, there, your mind is pacified. And the guy suddenly realizes the misery of self-fabrication. So be very mindful. Language is the tool of the gods. It's literally like the best thing we have. If there was like language is a technology so advanced we're living in it. It has a sort of divine simulative quality for our subjective realm. I say the skin of the ego is language. Language is how the mind allowed image to mean something else. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I think I'm going to start something. I'm going to create this Facebook group called School of Athens 2.0. And something like that. And I think that's where we should have a lot of dialogue because these chats aren't that efficient. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Much blessings and namaste.